Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 42, where I'm going to continue to look at little things that you can do to your writing that have a big impact. Things that if you introduce the consistency or uniformity into your writing, it makes your writing look a lot more professional. In the last lesson we looked at abbreviations. In this lesson we're going to have a look at definitions. Okay, as you can see next to me there's a lot of things to go through, so let's start. The first two things to say is just to remind you about what we covered in the last lesson. That is to say the importance of a style guide, because a style guide regulates your writing, creates rules for you to follow and to remind you about what rules you should follow in terms of writing. And having a style guide is a great way to ensure that consistency or uniformity in your writing. I will be doing a lesson on style guides very, very soon, in which I'll go into a lot more detail. Right, the thing with definitions is that there is no one way to write definitions. Different style guides will say different things, different people will do different things, different companies will do different things. And as you can see in the fourth point, if you wanted to define shareholders meeting, which is always a good idea because shareholders can cause a number of different problems if you use a possessive apostrophe for a singular shareholder or a possessive apostrophe for a plural shareholder or plural shareholders, then you could have all kinds of problems. But if you define it, then those problems go away. But how do you define it? Behind me, you can see 8 different ways you can define this. With the, without the, with inverted commas, without inverted commas, using bold, not using bold. So there's a number of different ways that you can do this. Choose one and be consistent. One thing you don't want to do, however, and this is the 5th point here, is don't define things and give it 2 terms. This is something that you see in legal documents a lot, something to avoid, because particularly if you define it as having 2 terms, you use one of those terms once, and then the other term many, many times. It just doesn't make any sense. So why would you ask the reader to try and remember 2 terms to refer to one thing? It's just not good practice. I've done a lesson on legalese. Never use hereinafter to introduce your definitions. Just don't do it. It's old-fashioned, it makes your writing look old, it makes you look old, it doesn't add anything to your writing, it's not professional. I've gone through, or rather it's not legal, it doesn't give any extra formality to your writing, it just looks a little bit stupid, to be honest. I've gone through this in a lot more detail in other lessons, so I won't go into too much detail here. Needless to say, don't include it in your definitions. Use sensible or easily recognised defined terms. For example, for shareholders meeting, don't do me. Not many people do this. So have a look at previous documents, have a look at other documents that your company have produced, have a look at the documents your clients send to you, and have a look at the way they define terms and try to mirror those definitions. Don't create new definitions, particularly strange ones, because me could be anything at all. So try not to create strange defined terms. Keep it simple, okay? The defined term is there as a reminder for the reader, not to confuse the reader. And lastly, avoid non-English quotation marks. Working here in Poland, I see this all the time, this style here, where you've got a lower inverted comma before the definition and a higher inverted comma afterwards. This is not English, this is Eastern European, Slavic, I don't know. Whatever it is, don't use it in English documents. Okay, I flew through those quite quickly because, to be honest, they are quite simple things to explain and quite simple things to adopt, so it doesn't need much introduction, but an example always helps. So have a look at this. We have to work with a criminal law firm, the KRLFI, and your boutique IP law firm, IP. And here you can see a number of things which are going wrong. We've got a confusing defined form, we've got different styles, and it just looks messy. Is IP a defined term? Is it not? Because the first defined term is in inverted commas, whereas the second one isn't. So is the second one extra information in some way? Or so you can see how this is confusing. But if we say this, for example, we have to work with a criminal law firm CLF and boutique IP law firm IP, then the uniformity, the consistency leaves the reader without any possible doubt. These are defined terms, they follow the same style. Now, I like bolding these defined terms. Bolding you can't see it really here. Hang on a second. Okay, you should be able to see it now. What I've done here is I've just left the defined term as being bolded, and the rest, the brackets and the inverted commas, and leave them unbolded. Okay, this is the style that I prefer. This is the style that I use in the documents that I work with. And if you do it this way, then it's, as I said earlier on, it's very, very clear to the reader that this is a defined term and that it's an easy to remember defined term. So criminal law firm, CLF, IP law firm, could be IP or it could be IPLF. Okay, and that's something that you'll see in the questions if you've signed up. If you're joining me on Patreon, you'll see one of the questions looks specifically at that. So hang on a second. Okay, that's better. You see, two things of the same class should be defined in the same way. So criminal law firm, IP law firm, and that way LF is very clear for the reader, and then IP or CL then is also very clear to the reader. Okay, so what are the teaching points? What do I want you to remember? First of all, as I said in the last lesson, consistency in use equals certainty. Consistency in use equals professionalism. Nothing else says lack of detail or accuracy than mismatched definitions. Trust me, I see it all of the time. It looks ugly. And that's, to me, if you were a client and you were paying for someone to produce a document, or you're a manager and you're waiting to receive a report, and you see mismatched definitions, then you start to think, is the rest of the document as inaccurate as the definitions? Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it is something that will be picked up and it will be thought about. I highlight the point again about creating a personal style guide, and I'll come back to that in a future lesson. And as I said earlier on, I recommend using inverted commas for clarity's sake and bolded forms. Okay, now it's time for you to put your thinking caps on and have a go at some questions. If you've signed up and you've joined me on Patreon, then click on the link below and download the questions. If you haven't, if you're watching me on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or on Facebook, then think about joining me on Patreon. Get access to my questions and my answer videos. So download the questions and make the definitions uniform. Once again, it's a relatively simple task. I say relatively because I've included one or two tricky questions in there. And develop a good habit, or break an old habit and start to develop good habits. This is all about getting you to practice, and in practicing, that's when you're going to start using these rules in your own writing. So have a go at those questions, have a look at my answer video and see how you got on.